Sports Show presents House of Rugby.
Hello and you're all very welcome to House of Rugby. My name is Máire Treasa Ní Dhubhghaill, and on this week's show we'll look back on a largely disappointing weekend for the Irish provinces, but we had a glimmer of hope yesterday with Leo Cullen's men getting the better of La Rochelle in France. Joining me in studio, as always, is the lovely Lindsay Peat, and we're delighted to be joined by Johnny Murphy this week. How are we doing?
Well, I'm buzzing.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course.
I know. I genuinely am. I am buzzing since that result, because I think we obviously spoke about our premonitions for this week's results, and I think unfortunately, there was we threw caution to the wind on a couple of the head-to-heads, but this was certainly one that stood out for me as both an ex-Leinster player, a Leinster fan, and something that has been now. It's the new rivalry of the new era
Absolutely.
of rugby, and it really reminds me of that old school Leinster Munster. And I think if Roger's done anything, he's fed that into the blood of these Frenchmen, and I think it lived up to the hype.
It absolutely did, and we'll start off with that positive note with Leinster getting the better of La Rochelle. They finally have gotten the monkey off their back now, Johnny.
Yeah, it was, and to do it in such difficult conditions. I was commentating on it yesterday, and the conditions were horrific. And before the game, there was this kind of probably anxiety around, are the conditions going to suit La Rochelle because of their power and their size? They'll play a basic kind of territory kicking game and just keep coming around the corner, because that's the thing that's really undone Leinster over the last kind of 2 or 3 meetings, was that power and size, and they struggled to stop that. Where yesterday they did. They rode their luck in certain areas at times, but in general, it was a really, really good performance, and executing that try, the way they did to close them up and then race them to the edge in their 22 was excellent. And then the penalty at the end was just phenomenal. But it's a real key marker laid down early in the season, early in the competition, that will just give them a huge amount of mental strength going forward.
Absolutely, because that's La Rochelle's first loss in the competition for 2.5 years. It was the final against Toulouse 3 seasons ago. That's the last time La Rochelle have lost. So what will this win do for Leo Cullen and for Leinster psychologically?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the kind of question mark last week, and we kind of were like, well, how are they going to Leinster overcome this, their Achilles heel, for want of a better word? They were just this one team who had the number on them, and it was always the psychological edge that was brought to them. The conditions weren't very conducive to the way Leinster play. They like to play open, they like to play expansive, and it's kind of like, I was thinking about this in the car on the way in, right, and it's kind of like a bit dramatic, but it's like the bully. Do you know, the bully who finally, the guy who's being bullied puts the bully on their ass, and that's exactly what I think Leinster did yesterday. They stood up to the bully and they put them on their ass, and they kind of walked away with a smile on their face, and it was a different performance. It was a game full, it was like a war of attrition. They stood up. Will Connors was like a dog. I mean, that man went for every ankle that was wearing white socks. And he was testament to, I think he set the stall out. I think we definitely saw a different edge that I hope Nina Barr has brought to them. And I think James Ryan alluded to that in his postmaster interview. I'm not going to condone fighting, but by God, when they stood up and, Dante got stuck in, and then Joe McCarthy, and then they all got in, and they just didn't take a backward step. We also saw success from La Rochelle in that little chip behind, that first line defence in between where the fullback covers, really put Leinster under pressure over the last 2 meetings where they really put them under pressure. We saw a glimpse of it yesterday, but the conditions again didn't help them in that sense. La Rochelle probably actually, which isn't like them, succumbed to a bit of the pressure. Like, they probably should have taken points but went for the corner. And Leinster's goal line defence, they rode their luck. You have to do it in meetings like that, but I definitely think it's a corner turned, and I think it was the icing on the cake was Kieran Frawley with the 60-metre kick. Was kind of like, we'll show you exactly what we came here to do. And I genuinely am buzzing, because I wanted to see how they go. I said this last week, I wanted to come up and really take it to them, and they did. Different style.
Completely different style. And as you said, horrible conditions. But La Rochelle, they came at them and they threw everything at Leinster. But Leinster stood up to them, as Lindsay said, and it was important that they were able to get stuck in like that they were able for that physical battle.
Yeah, and I think also technically they had the edge on them. Ryan Baird in the line out caused all sorts of problems, and they mixed their defensive line out options up, be it to stay down and then go after their maul, or to try and stop it at source by getting up, and then they got away with a couple of things. James Ryan in the first half grabbing an arm to get an exit just inside their 22 was, look, he gets away with it. It's but that really frustrated the La Rochelle captain, who was then in Carly's ear for that period. For about 2 minutes he kept at him. There's a break in play and Carly said, look, sometimes I get things wrong, we have to move on. And the hooker didn't. He then threw a ball over the top. He was completely, he was just concentrating on what had happened and the miss call, rather than, okay, what's important now, where are we going. We threw a ball over the top, and Leinster turned the ball over then after that. So I think there was a little kind of, I think as in they struggled with that mental bit, which is unlike them, that pressure. Like, it was clear that those little moments were really kind of irking them a small bit, and they got and every break and play, there was a lot of chirp. They were a lot of chirp. They were at the Leinster players, they were at the referee, and it kind of, that's pressure related, whether that's coming from the top or that, I don't know, but I think their discipline really hurt them towards the end of the game, when they were 4 points within. They had opportunities to get a try that they needed, and they just, their discipline, they just kept giving Leinster easy outs.
Yeah, La Rochelle did have chances to win, as Johnny said there, but Leinster's defence was huge for them, like the defence of the maul, the defence of the line out, and their scramble defence as well. They just didn't let La Rochelle get any foothold when they were in the 22.
No, and this is the thing with teams, and any teams that I watched over the weekend that weren't successful, if you let the opposition get gain line carries and that momentum, and we saw that, like Bordeaux were sublime against Connacht in doing that with front football, it gives you a platform. And Leinster were the team we know they can do. Their pressure from the defensive, their line speed was excellent, their decision making, their tackle completion, and they attacked the ruck. Now, McCarthy his offside penalty was poor, and when you're doing that, when that's your game plan, you live on the edge, so you have to risk reward, you have to live with that. I do agree with Johnny. I think Leinster for the first time got under La Rochelle's skin. They got under their skin, and you could see that. And when that happens and you're arguing referees' decisions, then things start to go with you. So that penalty that Will Scantlin gave away, that Gibson Park played really coolly, like hands down the ball, you could see him coming through. Those decisions they may not have gotten the last 2 seasons, but because they stayed on the right side of the referee, just about, they were getting those decisions, and then we're taking easy 3 points, whereas before maybe Leinster would have went for the corner and tried to overpower them. So I thought overall the game plan was excellent, and to keep La Rochelle, who is such an expansive, talented team, with scoreless as regards no tries, was just excellent. Away from home, conditions weren't great, but I believe the atmosphere there was exceptional, and it's never an easy place for any team to go into any French territory. So I think they need to build confidence, but they won't run away with themselves. Gary Ringrose said the same. Bath, they're playing Sale, this weekend, who are another exceptional team, so they have to back that up. So it's a launch pad. 100%. It's something we've seen glimpses of. It's a very different win for Leinster, which is good. I thought their selection merited that. Some of the selection, you're kind of going, right, Van Fleur's on the bench, but Will Connors comes in, and that's the man they needed to set their stall out defensively and go after the breakdown, which again they never did before. So yeah, very proud of a different Leinster style of play and win, and they won dirty, and they probably have been questionable over the last couple of years. We saw that with Munster in the semi-final in the URC. So let's win. Let's keep winning dirty if you need to.
Will Connors, you mentioned him there. He had a brilliant 48 minutes, and then to have the quality of Josh van der Fleer to come off the bench, and he was probably really fired up, and the impact that he had when he came on. So it's brilliant that they have this quality and that they can play them against each other, and maybe that's Nienenbar coming in now and benching maybe the usual starters, giving other players a chance, and bringing that competition and raising the standards again.
Yeah, competition is massively important for anyone at that high level to know that, you know, you can't rest on your laurels at any stage. I think what Leinster did, particularly at the breakdown, was they played Carly really well. He very clear in his communication that if you're over the ball, that's fine, but you have to make an attempt to take it. I think Bottia got over the ball maybe twice or three times, and he just stayed there. He didn't take it, and Carly was like, "No, you're good. You're in a good position. Take the ball. Be positive." And you know, for Van der Fleer's last turnover, it's clear he's on the ball, but he rips it with them, and there's no penalty. It's play on. I think they adapted to that really, really well. But you look at the riches that they have in that back row, and how Leo, and it's a credit to what Leo and the environment that he's created, how these guys have stayed around for so long. You know, Will Connors, Max Deegan, they've stuck at it and stayed with Leinster even though they haven't been first choice, but they're Ireland players. They've been capped, you know, 5 to 10 times, but they're really happy to stay and push and drive the standards. I think that's a real credit to what Leo's built there over the last kind of 6-7 years has been huge, and they're now hopefully going to reap the rewards from a Leinster perspective. They're going to reap the rewards there of that real out and out competition. And maybe Niambar is the person to come in that, as you say, has laid down that marker. Right, well, this is the man that we want, and you know, it's up to you now, Josh, to see. And that's only just one area. I'm sure those conversations are happening all the time.
And they backed Harry Byrne to start. We were debating the number 10 selection last week. How do you think he got on?
Yeah, he did really well when he came on. He was exceptional in the try, really under pressure, because actually what was key to that was Hugo Keenan's running line, and then obviously Jimmy O'Brien, good man yourself, Jimmy, coming off his wing to fill that gap. And that really hard line by Keenan held the La Rochelle defence, and then it was an easy out, and what a pass by Jimmy off his left hand out to Jordan Larmour. So there was huge calmness. It was calmness personified. They knew their roles, they were confident in it, and every player stuck to that. So listen, Harry Byrne, as we said, there's an exceptional talent there. He just hasn't had the good run of games, but I think also tactically Frawley was going to start on the bench because he can cover so many positions, whereas if you start Byrne on the bench, he can't come in and cover like wing, centre. I know Ringrose had to go on the wing when Natoi came on, so there's players that are there, adaptable and will do it, but you know, it probably made sense for Frawley to come on. But I mean, he's basically had the last say in winning, you know, getting Leinster over the line 2 weeks in a row. And
Absolutely.
that, to do that off the bench, cold, especially as a kicker, really crap conditions, take a bow. You know, and I know it was a collective, don't get me wrong, but it's those defining moments where there's trust instilled in a player and they can stand up with confidence. And by God, 60 metres right in front of the post, you know, players have missed easier kicks, but yeah, I'm just delighted for him because, as I said, I think he had a raw end of the deal when he was really at his peak the last time with injury, and he started the season so confidently, and as I said, not to start, didn't really rock him. He came in and he just took over. So that's again the testament to Leo Cullen, the belief every man is ready to come on, do their job, play their role, and help get Leinster over the line. So I'm excited to see what they can do, but it's very early in the season. But I certainly have a sense of excitement since that the win over the weekend.
Frawley came off the bench with the kicking tee practically in his hand because his first job was to kick over that penalty, and cool as ice, again, he was able to slot it over, and it just feels like he has an impact every time that he plays. Yeah,
he's an exceptional player. I suppose his versatility is... it's a massive strength, but then also can be a slight weakness in terms of selection because he fits so many slots on the bench. He's always going to probably be involved in the 23, where he's going to settle, who knows. And it's one of those things that if, you know, a player can say, I've been there myself where, you know, you cover a 12 out, you know, he covers essentially 10 out because they can move people to the wing. So it's, well, I want to play here. Okay, that's fine, but you have to wait for your chance. And it's difficult then to try and get that balance right as a player and within kind of the squad, where's the balance on the bench, and he just falls into that. But I think how he's performed over the last 3 to 4 weeks, and as you say, just being ready to act instantly shows kind of how mentally strong he is and how confident he is. You know, there was no, and he had, like watching the kick live, he had another 5 to 6 meters in him. Like it was phenomenal. And the minute it left his boot, left the tee, you're like, that's gone over.
What was it? 60 metres out.
It was right on the 10-metre line.
Yeah.
You know, he was right on his own 10-metre line, and it was an incredible nudge. And the breeze was with them slightly, but it wasn't like a tunnel, you know,
Yeah.
like it wasn't like a wind tunnel and coming directly behind him. But yeah, it was phenomenal. His performances have been really good, and it's probably he has an opportunity now, you know, to really solidify his place within an Ireland squad for the Six Nations, given, you know, these runs of games, to after Champions Cup, two Derby matches, then into more Champions Cup. You know, he's certainly going to be in that Ireland conversation now going forward if he continues to perform that way.
Has it put the 10 debate to bed when it comes to Leinster now that they have backed Harry? I know Harry Byrne's probably injured. I don't know what he came off the bench after 39 minutes. I don't know.
He'll be following their trying to play protocols. I think he went off for HIA.
Yeah, so he should be fine. It's never easy because it depends on each person with HIA, and obviously you have to look at the. Hopefully we will see him back. I think he did really well for the time he was on. He is an out and out 10. I do like the way he plays on the gain line and gets Leinster, you know, good momentum. He's a smart man, so he's another guy who probably needs that. What we've seen from Frawley is that he gets a good run of gains, he gets his confidence up,
and a show of faith.
Absolutely, and he then demands the 10 jersey. You know, that's what you want to see. That's what competition you want. Competition to breathe that one in, that everyone is kind of pushing each other, so there's no ceiling. You know, everyone's pushing each other. So I'd like to see him back. I'd like to see him back up that performance this week against Sale, especially in a home RDS where the crowd will be rocking. So yeah, we believe in Harry Byrne, you know, and that's, you know, I got my opportunity with Ireland through injuries, and it's when you get the jersey, it's your job to take it and keep it, and that's what his job is now.
Has this win put some of the questions that we've had over Leinster over the past few weeks, has this answered some of the questions that we've had about their performances?
Yeah, and I think they're only going to get better. Like Niamh Barr's only been there maybe 2-3 weeks actually on site. Now he would have put in some, like they changed up how they defended, kind of short line outs with the 10 in the channel, in the hooker channel with 9 outside, which allows them to bring a lot more line speed. Yesterday people were talking about their aggressive line speed, but it was that type of day anyway, so the team without the ball was probably the team that was going to do really well. So their line speed was probably more aggressive than it ever has been, but that was probably conditions led to a certain point. But they're going to get better and better because of who's just arrived, and like this is only probably week 3 of his tenure and what he's trying to develop. Really interestingly, last week, you know, in his first interview, he's saying it's not one size fits all in terms of how he delivers his messages or how he coaches teams. He has to figure out. What he said was he has to figure out kind of the dynamic, also player profile, and then fit the defensive system around what is best for that unit. But what a start, you know, and it's only so it's, as I said already, it's only going to get better.
Yeah. That brings fresh impetus, you know, to players who might have been out of the fringes. And I suppose that was probably a shock call if we look at the 7 jersey, which Van der Fleer has owned since his own kind of turning point, where he just took on board that, you know, he wasn't ball carrying enough, he wasn't making gain line, and he just grew. But now hopefully Will Connors, who has another guy who's been it's just the way he plays, he has no kind of care for his body, it's all for the jersey. But I think that'll be a nice fresh impetus for anybody within that Leinster group, because the culture is key, I think, to their success. But I think now it's now a fresh pair of eyes. I think again, to bring the referee and how he refs the game, the opposition getting under their skin, I think that's the part I'd like to see, how Niamh Barr is going to instill them, because we've spoken about being a Q-hero over the last couple of weeks, and I think that's something that they just need a bit more sinister attitude in some of the games where, like that, they stood up to somebody who's probably been the only team to really bully them and kind of call out their number over the last couple of weeks. So yeah, like Johnny said, it's that part alone just the Niamh Barr effect, you know, that's exciting to see, and how he can really elevate what has been a really successful team. And you can't undermine what Lancaster and Cullen have done over the last year, but how do you bring this team to the next level and really get them over the line, because they need to bring trophies this time around.
Well, this win, it wasn't full on revenge for what La Rochelle have done in the last 3 fixtures, but it has put them in a great position now. They've Sale at home this weekend, and they'll be looking at getting over the line there, and then looking into January, looking at home advantage for the quarterfinals, round of 16 as well. So it puts them in a good position. It puts them in the driving seat really in this pool.
Yeah, and I think the way the format of the new competition goes, that's you really need to be, especially starting off on a good foot and definitely winning your home games. So I think they'll go into the new year in a very confident position if they can get a win. But I also think it's important for this performance in La Rochelle, it can't be just a flash in the pan and just that it was just this, once-off rivalry, and the result is just, an isolated result. I think now they need to back this up against a very impressive Sale team who had their own good win over the weekend. So that it'll be interesting to see the teams who really got over the line this weekend, how can they back it up? And I think we'll start to now hopefully see the real contenders come to the top.
Yeah, Sale are top of the Premiership at the moment. They've been going really well. They beat Stad last weekend. What do you expect from them, and what kind of game will we see?
They're quite attritional, big side, similar enough to La Rochelle, but their head coach is, he's been very clear in terms of Alex, what he's done since he's been there over the last kind of 18 months, 2 years. He's built a team that was kind of consistently nearly men, that would have these flash in the pan wins, to being a real consistent side, driving standards, and he's a real no-nonsense individual, and that comes across in terms of how he coaches and how his teams perform. He was one of the cornerstones of what was originally the Saracens Wolf Pack. He would have led that. Their defence would be aggressive off the line, really physical, similar enough to this week. And like people will say, they're Leinster are playing Sale. Sale are a completely different animal to what they would have been historically. Now, they're one of the best, if not the best, side currently in England. And for them, it's how they perform at this higher level. There's always, they're always going to be top 2, top 3 now consistently, as they've been there for the last year over in England. It's how they perform now at the higher level is going to be really important. And they have, their coaching staff have a rich vein of form with previous clubs in Europe, so it's something that they'll want to really bring forward. So it's going to be a tough game this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
Yeah, because the Premiership sides did really well in round 1. Saracens were the only side to lose, and they were playing in Pretoria against the Bulls. So the English teams are flying high. There was talk a few years ago that they were in trouble, but they really came out fighting this weekend.
No, like Quins won away, Exeter won by a point, Northampton with a really Glasgow. So no, they really stood up and said, put their hands up and said, don't forget us. I think the thing about, back up Johnny, like Sale will come to Dublin. Everyone will want to knock Leinster off their perch, especially after a lot of talk that's probably, consumed the headlines now this weekend, was Leinster's, revenge and that final win, getting over the line against La Rochelle. So make no mistake about it, Sale will come here. Probably a bit creaky now in the scrum still over the weekend, which would be a concern for me. Line out functioned a lot better than we have. It'd been a good platform against La Rochelle, which again was a weak point. They targeted that. They didn't get as much success at the breakdown. But I still think Sale will come to target the breakdown, slow down what is really successful quick ball for us. I think they'll definitely target the scrum, which is a great platform, and they will try and overpower us with that arm wrestle and their physicality. So 6-day turnaround after one really physical game is not ideal for Leinster, but I don't think, other than Harry, we came away with many injuries, which is good. But it will be nice to back up the win against a very similar team against La Rochelle. So as I said, be interesting to see, but they won't be a walkover.
Yeah, and I think the thing about the Premiership to remember is that it's probably the holistic view where people go, the English sides are in a bit of trouble. Yeah. The top 6 sides are not in any trouble. They're good. It's actually the whole game over there is the problem at the moment, and you see what's happening with Newcastle and the teams down the bottom. They're just creating the separation, and it's just the financial issues are hitting are hitting certain clubs, not all of them, but the top 6 sides are, and it's a great league. It's a war of attrition over there. The top 6 really go at each other. They play good rugby. They're very physical, but I think people might be lured into a false sense of confidence because of what's been written about the Premiership and the RFU and how things are, and how are they going to fix the game, and there's talk of, you know, another team not getting paid on time and all of this stuff. But I think you have to take the top 5, top 6 teams out of that conversation. It's the bottom sides that are struggling, and that's the nature of the beast over there. But in terms of the revenue that Europe drives to those teams that are in it, that's vitally important. So they're going to be out to really do well in this year's competition.
Moving on to Munster, they welcomed Bayonne to Thomond Park on Saturday afternoon. There was talk at half-time of a bonus point win, Lindsay, and it finished in a draw, which felt like a defeat for Munster.
It did. This is a weird one. I watched the game, and they probably are really... Well, I was very impressed with Bayonne. I thought, you know, when they settled into the game after the first kind of 10, 15, 20 minutes, they were actually exceptional to watch. Their rush defence, especially in the midfield. So what kind of struck me is that Munster, for me, have been probably the best attacking team over the last couple of months. We saw that over the last couple of weeks with the URC. And they normally hit that, like, second line of attack. So they really catch teams. Bayonne were really narrow. They come up really hard. They were leaving dog legs, but for some reason they kind of went front door, you know, front foot carries, which I found strange, because actually if they had gotten out the back with their second line attack, I think they would have been much more successful and got to an edge and really put Bayonne under pressure. But this was one thing I certainly noticed. So I don't know whether Bayonne's defence, because it's hard when you're on the telly, because it looks like they've lots of room and lots of time to make passes. But Bayonne's rush defence, you know, they kind of, I suppose, they hunted high on the outside, so they really put Munster under pressure. But Munster were very, like, look, a lot of injuries, a lot of talk. Carby was out, O'Mahony was out, Klein was out, so they did a lot of Dave Kilcoyne, so a lot of exceptional players, experienced players missing, but they still really should have got over the line, especially there's so many chances at the 5 metre. But it was like the pressure got to them. Like, even I think the 60 kind of ladder end, the 60 odd minute, 67 minute, I think it was Calvin Nash made a great break, and he actually should have probably given off the ball, and it would have been an easy try. For some reason then and Atura came on. I thought he was an exceptional impact for Bayonne, and he just, what a tackle, like a metre from the line. You just thought it was a sure try. So just Bayonne were exceptional in how they played. They really frustrated Munster. Thought Munster probably should have taken more points when Bayonne were really under pressure with penalties. So yeah, they will be kicking themselves. It's an opportunity missed now, and they really should have beat them at home. Yeah,
I think on that with teams like Bayonne, when they travel, the longer they stay in the game, the more they're actually going to try and win it. Where if you can keep the scoreboard building and get past 2 scores, or 15 to 18, keep the scoreboard ticking over, they lose kind of interest. Where they get a kind of taste for it if they're within a score, and then they get a cheap score, and then they're back in, and then it's like, oh right, okay, we can actually do something here. And I think that killer instinct probably just hurt them a bit. Again, their maul, for Bayonne's try, that's a line outside the 22, and they end up scoring. They break off the maul on the 5 metre line. Like, that's a consistent thing that people have been talking about that hasn't been resolved. I do think that also a lot is down to it's not squad depth, because they're missing so many people. You have a couple under 20s on the bench that come on and play. O'Connor and these guys, like, they're going to be brilliant players for Munster for 4, 5, 6, 10, 15 years maybe, but they're coming off the bench and they haven't played for the Irish 20. They've been 6 nations ahead of them. It's very hard in Thomond Park in particular, on a European night, to come out and showcase your ability in that, just that amphitheatre that it is.
So do you think the injuries impacted the performance a lot?
Yeah, I do. And, like Lindsay talking about, front football, you look at the likes of O'Mahony, Kilcoyne, even a Dogbo, like, who's been so good over the last 6-8 weeks on those front door options. They get you go forward. They're bringing Klein. Line speed, John Klein. They give you that. They give you that experience. Like, there's 4 starters there that don't, that aren't there in the forward pack. That game is different, I think, and it's no disrespect to anyone that came off. It's just the depth is just not was just not there, and the depth is there, but they're just young. You know, like they're probably too young, and this experience is going to stand to all those guys, and it probably won't happen again in a year or 2 years time. It is hard on them, but again, they had the opportunity, and it's like a little kind of microcosm of the whole game. You know, Crowley probably rushes himself in the drop goal at the end, and they had no chase. So he's set, and he's like, okay, I'm going to take it now. Go. Where he actually had time to, because they didn't chase, he had time just to plant, get set, and then kick through it. And that was kind of, there just seemed to be this anxiety about, let's get it done. Let's, you know, kill the game and get it over with and then get out. Which can be hard to kind of switch that momentum when the momentum drivers are all kind of going towards Bayonne, you know, that tackle, the maul, they're just giving them easy kind of shifts into the game. And the more of those momentum shifts, as I said, that go with those French sides when they're away from home, the more they stay in it, the more they're wanted then. And you saw them at the end, like that was a win for them in reality, you know, like how they were celebrating after the club's history. To do that in Thomond Park of all places, you know, I'd say it was an enjoyable evening in their dressing room.
Are all these inaccuracies down to lack of leadership? Is it the pressure that they were under? Is it nervousness, like Johnny was saying there? Because as Graham Roundtree said afterwards, like that game was teed up for them at home Saturday afternoon in Thomond Park. You know, Bayonne, one of the weaker French sides, coming to town, and they were banking on a home win.
We called them weaker, and I know they only qualified because they finished 8th in the top 14 last year.
I suppose they don't have that pedigree in Europe.
No, of course, but I think when you're in European competition, it's like Championship football and GAA. It's like, you know, the FA Cup. There's always upsets, you know, and team can just have that one performance. And I think you'd be guilty to think Bayonne were going to be an easy outfit to overcome. They came on the back of, out of 9, I think, you know, 9 played, they'd 5 losses. But they are laden with internationals who came off the back of a World Cup. I thought their Fijians stood up. Bajé, am I pronounced that right, for the winger? I thought he was absolutely great when he had ball in hand. And obviously he finished off with that try when they broke off them all. So they had glimpses of players. Machino, you know, his French experience, and I thought his leadership, I thought, was key. They probably rode their luck an awful lot. I do think Munster should have taken those 3 points and really put their foot on the neck. We spoke about how Crowley has been so composed and such a leader over the last couple of weeks, but as the game went on, I thought he started to we saw the inexperience, like his little kick over the top. You never see Tadhg lose his shit, excuse my language, with them, and he kind of was like, don't do that, like a little chip over the top to give Bayonne back the possession. You're like, why are you doing that? Just keep the ball, trust your process. And every week we've kind of said they trust in themselves. They've really been on a high, but it was probably the first time they were under pressure to know how to win in really tight games. And probably that inexperience oozed through then, because the want is there, the endeavour is there, the energy is there, but sometimes you actually need to slow it down. Like when Kendellen came on, his first, actually, it was a turnover. For some reason, the pressure of just this inside ball really put, again, Munster under pressure. Tadhg himself, even 5 metres from the line, wanted to give a skip pass. The idea was good, but it went out over the sideline. So it was kind of these indecisive moments where they would have normally executed, and then it punishes you in a really tight European game. So it was an exciting game to watch. It really was. I enjoyed it. But from a Munster point of view, with the calibre of player, though inexperienced, they probably should have got over the line.
I don't think you can underestimate, like, when you look at their team, you know, like Shane Daly missing, Frisch missing, you know, like those guys have been a cornerstone, and they haven't been missing due to international duty, so they've been there consistently playing week in, week out. And like towards the end of last year, Shane Daly, people were talking about, is he going to get into the greater World Cup squad, because he'd finished the season on such a high, you know. And then you've guys like Butler and O'Connor who are, but like it's nearly their first involvement, you know. It's down towards the end of, you know, their early careers, and you know, you've got those injuries and the guys they've lost. That just is it can be a real tough thing to do, to manage those momentum shifts. And then when people start getting at each other, you know, like Tadhg having a go at Crowley, that kind of stuff, that can seep out to the wider group and just create that anxiety. So it's hard. I'm probably not being overly harsh on them. I don't think they need to, because they've played so well up until this point. They just, it was just, I think this is a greater squad, and when you're down into academy guys, it's hard, you know.
They were overpowered though in the pack, and I suppose that maybe is one of the worries as this competition goes on, because Bayonne have a strong pack, no denying that, but there are teams out there that are even stronger, more physical. Is this going to cause problems for Munster as the competition goes on?
Yeah, well, like, I think, you know, having you know, Klein and Peat back will obviously help that. But yeah, that is something that they have to rectify somehow. Whether they go and they try and get a transfer in to figure that out in the longer term, but they have to develop these guys as well. So a Dogbo or Hearn, who for me Hearn has been incredible. His footballing ability in the wider channels, and I didn't think he was a natural six, but when you see how he played against Glasgow and how he has played, and physically was against Munster, against Leinster, there's people that can stand up, but it's something that they have to manage. But I think it starts with their mouldy, and technically they need to be better in that position, because that's letting them down. And physically, people are always going to say, well, physically they're getting beaten up because they're going back mauled all the time. So it is something that they have to rectify. I think they have the guys to do it, and they play so well, ball in hand, that if they can manage that, be it through a mixture of bringing real aggressive line speed, that even if they do lose contact, they're still within the gain line. That's something that they have to figure out for themselves. But it all stems, for me, and people have been talking about it for weeks, from their mouldy.
Can I ask a question? Were you surprised at the Murray getting in 9 instead of Casey?
Not really. I think the experience there, and then for me having that balance on the bench where Casey can come on, really test the edges, and bring that pace and bring the power around the corner with what Casey does around the breakdown, and then obviously they want to build pressure and build momentum, and I don't think there's very many people better than Mur at understanding those momentum shifts and building that pressure on, trying to put that pressure on teams. So they're obviously wanted to squeeze Bayonne in that selection, but for me that selection is a horses for courses, how they want to play, what team, whether they want to move a team around them more, and as you alluded to already, playing those front door options, they didn't want to move them around as much, which probably in hindsight they look back and say they probably should have, that they wanted to kind of create that kind of pressure cauldron with someone like Murray at 9, and that's what he does. Yeah,
I was just probably watching the game, and you know, I suppose for McCarthy's try and Coombs, then obviously it came for me off the back of the quick ball. So when Casey came on, I was wondering, you know, would they been better off moving that ball, considering Bayonne were able to get people in the line, they were able to come off the line, really kind of shepherd them in, and anytime they actually did go out and use that second line of attack, they were much more, I suppose, fruitful. They got much greater return. Nankivell was starting to get into the game when they did that, so I just thought the pressure was on. So I was kind of wondering, now it's not to undermine, Murray's an exceptional player, and like you said, it's horses for courses, but I was wondering, would they have had a different outcome if they maybe started with Casey, really sped that up, and then brought on Murray to put them under more pressure? So I was just kind of saying, I still think they should have got over the line. You know, I think Scott Buckley, I thought, you know, had an exceptional game. We kind of look back. I suppose there's one point I want to make. When I was looking at, it was on RTE Live, and you kind of, you know, the pre-chat was, you know, the great days of Munster and back to European rugby, and I hope that we can just chill the beans for a second for these young men who need that time, because actually the likes of Dogbo and Buckley came out of the back of when, you know, a lot of the senior lads never made it back from South Africa, so they got their opportunity, and now we're seeing them really come. And I thought, you know, he had a great game. I thought Butler come on, and you know, I loved his kind of, he had no inhibition of that crossfield kick to McCarthy again, which are kind of like, right, maybe a wrong time when you're trying to control a game. So we just need, these young men need time they need time
So
for
what
the
is
European.
a realistic expectation for Munster in Europe this year? This is the first time in 12 years that they're playing in the Champions Cup as champions.
But some of their best performances actually in a really stop-start first half of the season last year were the European performances. So we need to bring them back in, but now we need to probably fine-tune. And, that's what the review will be so important today, is those key moments where they're teaching points. It's not to berate anybody. You have to make mistakes to learn. And I think these will be, if this review is used well by Graham Rowntree, who I'm very impressed with so far, he'd just use that review to really hone in on the teaching points for the next round. And when these young men are in the same position and they don't have the experienced men maybe back around them, that they back themselves in just managing the game. And that might have been to slow the ball down and just keep possession and give Crowley a little bit more time for that drop goal. And it's those moments that they will learn from. And it'll be key to going forward. But definitely to knockout stages, I would hope to definitely for them to reach a quarter final, if not a semi-final, if they can get the experience back. I think they will struggle against the more physical teams if they don't get the likes of Klein back, maybe O'Mahony, who can get them that really dirty, dogged front football.
Yeah. It's an incredibly competitive pool now after Northampton winning away, Exeter winning away. And before we finish up on Munster, if we touch on next weekend, they have a really tough task going to Sandy Park to face Exeter. Now, we know Munster's form away. They can perform against the odds sometimes when you least expect them. Like they had 6 away wins in the competition last year up to the final. So what can you expect from them this week, and what will their main focus be in training?
I think there'll be a bounce back, definitely. Again, without harping on it, there'll be a lot of maul prep. Exeter probably have, they've regrouped within their overall structure, and now they're seeing fruition of that with the younger guys coming through. They're a very good side as well, and Sandy Park is a real difficult place to go. Munster have a bit of history there, so they know what it's going to be like, but it's an opportunity to go, and even though the pressure's on them, they have to play a bit more with where the shackles are off and do what they did against Glasgow and the tries they scored against Leinster, where they're spreading the ball. They're going to have to go there, and they're going to have to move, and they're going to try, and they're going to have to play. And that suits Munster now. So I think that's, I think that could be one of the games of the weekend, with how Exeter like to play and what they have and the atmosphere that that they can create there. It's a great place to play, and I think that's going to be a titanic battle, but one that is actually going to be, if it's good weather, going to be brilliant to watch, because both teams are going to want to play and have a dig off each other.
Connacht now. We kicked things off in Europe on Friday night with Connacht. A very disappointing result against Bordeaux. It finished 41-5. That was their biggest ever home defeat in Europe, and Connacht just looked stunned, Lindsay.
This is a tough one, because Bordeaux were exceptional. My God, some of their offloading, their support running, their running lines, they were always like. It was one of the props gave this little chicken wing offload, and he had no right to do that. Whatever about no right to give the offload, whoever was the recipient had no right to catch it. So I thought they were absolutely exceptional. When you have Jalabert in your squad and Damien Penaud, to name but a few, I just thought they were different gravy, and I felt sorry for Connacht, because when it's broken play like that, we did see them against South Africans when they were under pressure, and they do struggle in that broken play. But yeah, Bordeaux were just a different gravy. I thought they were exceptional to watch, and yeah, once they got front football, they were able to offload, and unfortunately Connacht had no answer, and especially to do with Mac Hansen on 22 minutes, one of your more experienced players, and someone who probably instills a lot of confidence in still a very young, inexperienced team, especially at this level, wasn't ideal.
Yeah, Bordeaux were deserved winners, and Johne, they were on top in almost every aspect of the play, and they cut Connacht open, but Connacht started the game well, but they just couldn't convert the points. Yeah,
now I think you have to pay respect to Bordeaux, what they've done over the last kind of 4 to 5 years. They've built it correctly. Yes, they probably have a budget maybe 5-6 times what Connacht have in terms of, but they've built it with a really good academy system, and then they've signed guys like Penaud, the Tongan prop can't pronounce his name. You know, he comes in and like he's impossible to move off the ball. But they've really they've built an exceptional squad, and they're contenders. And I think it was really disappointing from a Connacht perspective that even though they started well, that they never really got into full flow. And stuff that we've spoken about before, and a lot of people are talking about, is how well Connacht have played the style that Mark Sexton has brought in. It's a young coaching ticket. It wasn't the team that we saw in the URC. Like, what was letting them down in the URC was kind of small moments, not taking your kick off receipt, basic stuff that was, you know, I think Edinburgh scored a try where they were looking at each other for a quick tap. You know, it was Tiernan
last
O'Halloran,
week with Leinster faffing at the back of the scrum.
Like Tiernan O'Halloran stops when he thinks it's a knock on. There's no whistle.
It's clean lapses of concentration.
It was lapses in concentration, not execution errors. Their execution was high when they had the ball, where Friday night was really poor execution. And the last play before half time kind of sums them up, where, you know, they play for about 2 minutes, they go nowhere, and a perfect pass, and the ball just dropped, and then the half ends, and there's literally this kind of exhale of everyone in the crowd. It's like, oh, right. And that just kind of summed up the whole evening. And, you know, probably only one player can really stand up, and that was Prendergast. He never, ever stopped, and he tried the whole way to the end.
And Hansen until he came off.
Whether it's a combination, we were speaking beforehand, whether it's a combination of not winning last week, then losing Mac with 20 minutes, Hansen after 22 minutes, does everyone just go, oh, here we go again? But yeah, it was just a real disappointing performance, but one that you have to, when you look at it in the cold light of day, you have to go, well, Bordeaux are really good, and Bordeaux are going to go they're going to go deep in this competition, and they came to Galway on a Friday night, which, like, Toulouse have been turned over there historically. It's not a good place and not an enjoyable place on a Friday evening for French teams to go and get a win. But they arrived, they came to do a job, and it was clear from the warm up, they were like here. And like, credit to Nolan McNamara, obviously an Irish coach, young Irish coach. He's back there now and doing a great job.
Yeah, Bordeaux, they are a team littered with internationals, and they could be dark horses in this competition now, Lindsay.
Laden with internationals, but, you know, their basics, they were ruthless. Do you know, they were ruthless. Even on their breakaway, I think it was the second row, his ball presentation, he was so long, he's obviously over 6 foot, but for then Connacht to run behind his feet to get, you know, back through the gate to try and steal that ball. I think Ralston went to get it and Luku had it gone. Do you know, they were ruthless in everything they did. As I said, their work off the ball, their running lines, their support lines, it was a collective. And then who came off the bench was just like, we're just going to turn it up again. To me, Connacht look at step behind, you know, when Bordeaux took off after the first kind of 10 minutes, when I think they scored their first try in the 11th minute. I could be wrong with that, I'm open to correction, but from then on, to me, Connacht, other than their own maul try, they looked a step behind. Even every tackle was a step behind. The ball was nearly gone. Luke, who sniped at the post, like, that's basic stuff at any level of rugby. When you don't have your pillar there, the gap between the pillar and the second, you know, you normally have 10, 20, the gap there, he just exploited it. And again, it was just so easy for Bordeaux to get from football. But they were also a very smart team, and maybe that's where the international experience come in. They were able to pick whatever gap they wanted or whatever flaw in the Connacht defence. They were able to just always pick it and get their hands free and offload. And they made it look easy, but I do think they were ruthless. I don't think it was anything necessarily to do with Connacht. I think Bordeaux came here with a mission, and they came away from the sports ground with, you know, heads held high, and I know they'd be pretty happy chest out. And I do think they will be a dark horse in this competition if they continue to play the way they were.
But this isn't good enough by Connacht standards. If they want to be at European standard, this performance is not good enough. Do you think, as Johnny was saying there, that the 6-day defeat, the defeat 6 days previous against Leinster impacted them or took a lot out of them emotionally and physically the way they lost against Leinster on
I think
the
it's
80th
been
minute.
something for Connacht as a collective over the last number of years. And again, Johnny, you can come in on this, agree or disagree. I think they're a team for me who they're great when they're confident and getting wins. And any team will, you stick with that and you're very confident going into games. But they have to be a team, if they're going to lose against Leinster, they should be bolstered by the fact that they were by far the better team, and it was just one slip and a couple of small errors that they should learn from, basics that they should have went into this game with a lot of confidence and set their stall out. This should be the sports ground now, should be a fortress, it should be a home game, and they should have really bounced back. And Bordeaux were far superior and you'd like to see something more, but they're a team, I think, when they go on losses they just don't seem to recover. And this has been kind of a consistent with Connacht. They'll put some good wins together, some good performances. And a bit like Ulster last year, turned their season when they lost against Leinster and they never bounced back. And I think Connacht need to bounce back this week and kind of say, no, shake themselves off. There's some exceptional players, some exceptional combinations. Pete Wilkins has really, he'd be disappointed. He was really disappointed in that post-match, and it won't be an easy review for them today. Other than Prendergast, everyone will need to look at themselves and be better for this week.
Yeah, to ship 6 tries at home on the opening night is very disappointing. How will Pete Wilkins lift the team now ahead of next weekend? They're away to Saracens.
Well, I think it's all about what's important now. How's he going to fix the problems? You get in, you get your review done, and then you move on. And you put in a plan in place where they feel they can go get a win away from home. But it is now, with the result and how difficult getting out, is he going to rotate and give people opportunity ahead of, and then not take the foot off, but give guys opportunity, and then look at, okay, well, 2 weeks of Christmas, they're really important to us because we're going to be URC orientated. It's going to be interesting to see how selection goes this week, and maybe bringing some other guys back in gives that bit of energy, because you're giving guys a cart before provincial derbies, which are brilliant around Christmas. They make Christmas worthwhile for you when you have to take it easy, and if you can play in these 2 games, you accept not having a beer on Christmas Day, or looking after yourself for those days, because there's an opportunity to get 2 wins on the board and put them back up in the in the URC table. So a couple of changes, bring some new energy back in, and then go and play. Again, they've played some phenomenal stuff.
Yeah.
And Mark Sexton has there's a lot of credit to Mark on what he's done in a very short period of time. And then D-wise, John Muldoon, they have to get things right. And yeah, it's going to be a tough week in training, but one that they just have to be very clear and clinical on. It's about this weekend. Let's get some energy, guys, in training and kick on from there.
Yeah, they don't become a bad team overnight, and that's probably what they'll be drilling home this week.
Back to basics, I think, will be the key. Especially Sarries will be a tough place to go because they're the only English team, as we said, who lost over the weekend. They're a very proud club. So it'll be probably that game to watch. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. Obviously, we're hoping Connacht can just bounce back, but it will be, get your basics right. They're your platforms, and everything else will come off that. Have confidence going into it and get an away win.
And finally, on to Ulster. Like Connacht, they looked miles off at this level this weekend against Bath. They threw away another half-time lead and fell to a 3rd defeat in a row. That game finished 37-14.
I felt harsh last week when I was looking back on some of the clips, like, oh yeah, Ulster frustrate me, but again they kind of backed up why they frustrate me. You see the break by Stockdale, it goes to Ballacoon or Hume to Ballacoon, and they have this intricate play for Doak's try. The Billy Burns was probably a bit of luck as he tried to kick through and it came back, but it got them back in the game and they built on that. But then they can't succumb to the pressure when it's near their try line. Whether it's discipline, they got a yellow card, it was cynical, it's not rolling away, you're offside. And again, it comes back to even their URC where it's been it's been at that tipping point, and for some reason they cannot manage a game on their 5 metre. Just get in your defensive line, make your tackles, make good decisions. Don't be indisciplined because you're just buying into the other team. Now, can't take away from Bath. I thought they're very good, and we knew there was probably going to be a tough fixture for them to come out on the right side of. But yeah, again, it's just they blow hot and cold so many times in a match.
Like their try before half time, you look at that going, that's brilliant rugby.
Yeah.
You're like,
Brilliant
that's
rugby,
exceptional.
yeah.
And then you go, right, this is the time, at half time, looking at it, and you go, right, this is the moment now where
Kick on.
Yeah, people are going to go, right, I'm going to shut everyone up that's been speaking about us, and here we go, this is it. A win, another performance, another second half performance now away from home, and we get rid of a lot of doubters. And then, to be fair, Bath are a really good side. Again, they're another one that have spent well and put a lot on the line. So if they don't get some kind of traction back from what they've spent, with getting Russell in, Van Gran, at the top of the tree. But yeah, it was just you get excited and you're like, right, here's the moment, and then you're just completely deflated. Now, Bath only gave away 2 penalties in the second half. They have a really powerful pack, scrum, maul, and then you look at the back line that and the experience that they have. Like, Finn Russell has lost a final. Ben Spencer's won a couple. Won a Champions Cup with Saracen. So they have that experience now, that have been there, done that, or been there and not done it. So they know what it's like to lose a final. That's going to help bring them to potentially be. And Bath have been similar to Ulster. Even in my time over there, there's been all this chatter about, we're going to do something. And this year, kind of now with what they've assembled, looks like they actually might. Where Ulster, just again, it's just such a disappointing.
What is the main area of concern from an Ulster perspective over the past few weeks, do you think? Ill discipline is one we've spoken about a lot
look at
on
Henderson's
the show.
penalty.
11 penalties they gave away at the weekend
Consistency of
again.
performance.
Yeah.
They've showed they can do it in one moment, and then 2 minutes later they do the complete opposite. And that's, I think, the biggest frustration from a coaching perspective is like, well, that's what good looks like, and then 90 seconds later that's what bad looks like, and there's no.
So why is this happening? What do you put that down to?
It's different. Is it because there's been a lot of chopping and changing in selection? I don't know. There's something amiss.
Well, Dan McFarlane mentioned training, the standard of training after the defeat against Edinburgh. So there's something not right in camp.
But he has to manage that. Do you know, he's the facilitator of his environment with his players. So, this isn't a new thing. This isn't just this profound moment where we're like, oh my God, what's happened to Ulster? This has ever since the loss to Leinster last year. And it's kind of this burning question. And you're like, someone give me an answer here. Because at this stage, I don't know how they fix it. Like, I couldn't get over Ian Henderson's penalty where, like, Spencer just kicked that over in front of the post. And the referee is talking to him. That ball is not there for you to turn over. And he still went after. And I'm like, that's an easy 3 points. That is mind-blowing.
And someone of his experience, you'd expect him to lead the way when it comes to decisions like that.
It was really like petulance. Like, it's different for a cynical penalty where you just have no choice and you really have to slow the breakdown. So that's what they got the yellow card for. And you can kind of forgive that because you're like, okay, that's a game management, you're making an effort. But there was no reason to go after that ball. Leave the breakdown. Get in the line. If you're under pressure at your defensive line, leave the breakdown. It should be the tackler and whoever's nearest, grand. That should be your rule of thumb. But the more people you have on your feet and the more you can get off their feet on the opposition, you're now in the ascendancy. And I just think, I don't know, this comes from a good place. So if any Ulster fans listen to me, it is coming from a good place because you see the exceptional rugby 1 minute and then you're on the back foot at the next. It's just, I've never seen a team to blow so hot and cold, but this is a consistent over the last now 12 months and you're kind of like, what has to change here, lads? But I know what Dan is saying. He seems a good guy, he seems a good coach. There's exceptional players there. Lots of chopping and changing, and we spoke about that. Was that kind of looking at what your best combinations are going into Europe? But yeah, I just don't know. But something has to change. But to me, it's your coach and staff or your facilitator. And obviously there's responsibility on the player group. But it's just something that's inherent there now, and it's not going away.
Yeah, Racing come to town now this weekend and they'll be hurting after last weekend's defeat. So how do Ulster get over this now? How do they halt this losing streak?
They have to be more disciplined. They have to be a little less, I think, as Lindsay said, it's a great word, a little less petulant. I think that's kind of something that is coming out in their performances. So when they're inaccurate, everything lose. It's like one moment and then everything breaks. They have to manage those momentum shifts. They need their leaders to really stand up and take control of those moments, and when they're in a game, stay in a game. So if that's, you know, after they score, they control, just get the ball past halfway, whether you run, kick it, or you just kick it out, get past, reset, go. I think it's really important that they are very moment orientated. So play by play, set by set. Again, very basic and might sound like kind of bullshit in a way, but it'll probably it'll work, because when they build into games and when they have opportunities, it's then not kicking on. And then it's like when they don't kick on, they feel that frustration, and that gets into the players, and then they start making mistakes and they give people easy entrance into their 22. And against sides like Bath, like Racing this weekend, you know, with guys like that and the experience that they have in their teams, they're gonna get it. They're going to convert those opportunities, and that's a big thing for me, is being able to manage that. But they have to have a reaction. There's been no reaction, even though they've been called out in the media by their head coach around training standards. There hasn't been. Again, they get to that moment, as you already said, right, here's the reaction, but they have to pull through on it now.
It's like they get under their own skin, isn't it? So I'm kind of thinking, like, and I was that player that there's such high expectation of myself, so I was nearly petulant, because I'm like, well, I haven't reached the standards. It's like you kill yourself for a mistake. And I'm wondering then, is Dan McFarland, though he expects these standards of really exceptional players, maybe he needs to give them a little bit TLC and say, it's all right to make a mistake, reset yourself, like you said, play by play. What's the next key marker now? We have to stay disciplined, stay in D, will frustrate the other team, they will turn over the ball, and that's the patient bit you need. Unfortunately, you don't like to play D, but when you stay disciplined and all stick together, because even for the Ollie Lawrence break off that scrum, it was an exceptional play now for Cokasinga to get in. Yeah, he was brilliant, but Hume was kind of just off. For some reason, he was bit in, and there's such a gap then that they exploited. So it's those little moments, and you're like, right, is there a distrust there? Like, where that, because that should be a solid, like they were lined up great, you know, they had numbers.
It's like James, he was trying to make a moment there himself by getting out of line, and I'm going to stop the ball, I'm going to be the person to then create that moment that's going to give us an opportunity, where they need to do it together, where, you know, they stick together there, push them to a touch, you know, or it's like all their leaders are like, right, I'm going to be the one to do it. And then, you know, even Henderson in that moment, he's like, I'm going to get in the ball, but you have to listen to what the referee is saying to you, rather than, right, well, I'm just going to be bloody minded, I'm going to do the ball regardless of get the ball regardless of what's going on. So I think that's
play
the problem.
as one cohesive unit.
Yeah, and they just have to kind of manage that, because they have the quality to do it, you know, they really do. And like, again, that try before half time, like, that could be try of the year, like, in terms of how they played. It was an unbelievable and a brilliant support line by Doak. It was just a really, really good, well-worked team try, and I think it's just their leaders are a bit anxious about, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be the person to change momentum, where they can stick together, and I think that's something that probably just needs to happen a bit more.
Just little moments.
Yeah.
So instead of one big moment changing a game, if they can just make little impacts consistently throughout the game, I think they'll come on the right side of that. Yeah. And they just get rid of the petulance, get rid of the impatience, give yourself a little bit of credit, you know, and believe in yourselves collectively, individually, collectively. And I think if they can do that, they can turn a corner, because I think at this stage we all probably need to lay off the frustration, because they're probably so frustrated. That's the way I see it. Like, they just get under their own skin. You're just like, chill. It's still, there's 80 minutes there. You have so much talent to change this game. Just little baby steps, and you'll be fine. Not these big moments to just win the game in this one big moment. And I think, they're probably trying themselves really too hard now to get themselves back on a foot. But just they just need to enjoy it as well. And in that moment with that try, they enjoyed it, but then they frustrate themselves again. Yeah,
but like, you know, look, they were away from home against a very good team. That again are probably going to look to go deep in this competition, but they've an opportunity at home in front of their own their own fans pre-Christmas, against a team that has a lot of European Cup kind of history. So like they're one game away from it clicking and it being a marker moment that will really galvanise and boot them on again into these Christmas, into pros. But yeah, like, so they've a chance every week, and they just need one. I think one win will really solidify that group and give them an opportunity to kick on.
Well, we'll leave it there today. My thanks to Johne and to Lindsay. That's all we have time for on today's show. We'll be hoping for more of a positive result in round 2 for the Irish provinces. But regardless, we'll be back here next week on House of Rugby to look back on the Champions Cup. Until then, from myself and Lindsay and Johne, slán go fóill.
Sports Show presents House of Rugby.